And now, the Grantland NFL podcast.
Welcome to the Grantland NFL podcast. Today's Monday, January 5th. My name is Robert Mays. I'm a writer at Grantland.com. Joining me as always, come playoff time even, it's Bill Barnwell. Bill, how are you?
You're making that out like I would not be recording during playoff time for some reason.
Who knows, buddy? You just go into a bunker. I can't even imagine what you were like this weekend. I wish I could have watched you watch the games.
Well, I'm not going to lie, Mace. That's a little distressing. You have watched games with me before. You know it's not that exciting.
I don't know. I feel like you turn it up a little bit this time of year. I feel like you morph into a different person. You like level up a little bit.
I appreciate that. I'm happy that you feel that way. I don't. I feel like I turn it down. I'm just like, everyone's watching these games. I don't know what I'm going to say. I mean, I watched the games. I felt like, I'm not going to lie, I fell asleep during the first half of Carolina, Arizona. That'll happen.
No worries. You don't have to be ashamed of that.
Got woken up by the
I fell asleep a little bit during the second half of Bengals Colts, so no worries on that end either.
To be fair, so did some of the Bengals. We should get to, I think, what most people would believe to be the most important moment and the most interesting moment of the weekend, which was that penalty call, or non-call, I should say, in Dallas, Detroit.
So I feel like you and I are both on the same page in regard to the conspiracy levels involved here. I'm not too worried about that. I don't know if Des Bryant got like something tapped into his ear where he got to go out and say it wasn't the right call and that's why they changed it. I think this is much more a product of lack of communication and terrible processing by the league in terms of how they build their postseason officiating crews, rather than it is somebody like making sure the Cowboys win a playoff game. Because no one's really done that before.
Right. I mean, like who can argue with the unfettered success of the Cowboys over the past 15 years? I mean, it feels weird to me in some way to be the dude who's like, and other the dudes, I guess, who's like, yeah, conspiracy theories are dumb, considering we write for Grantland and our boss is Bill Simmons, and this is exactly what Bill Simmons would write about. But I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense. It's fun to think about, I guess, but the idea that there's actually a conspiracy to help the Cowboys win is just ridiculous. It would be one thing if this playoff weekend had been just devoid of bad calls. It had been this weekend where every call was right, everyone was smart, everyone was making these wise decisions. Refs aren't great. I mean, that's just the nature of the job. There aren't enough of them. They aren't trained well enough. They aren't full time. And the system in which we have them look back at plays very quickly and have them sort of confer on the field with no opportunity to look at replays means that it's always going to be difficult for them to make calls. And this was a case where absolutely they blew it. They made the wrong call. And it's not out of the question for them to make the wrong call. It makes a lot more sense that they would screw up than it would that they would risk their careers and the future of the NFL to get this one game to lean very slightly further towards the Cowboys.
The issue of not being able to replay or penalties like that, I think that's a problem. I think the other problem in play here is that why in your most important games would you piecemeal together an officiating crew just because they're the best individuals at what they do, like line judge or whatever? Wouldn't it make way more sense to have the best graded crews that are used to dealing with each other and know how to do it? Like the fact that Mike Pereira said that yesterday, I was like, what? That's actually what they do? That makes zero sense. Like, who decided that is one of those moments where somebody in that meeting has to be like, yo, guys, this is dumb. Like that makes zero sense whatsoever.
Who is this guy in this meeting? I like this dude. He should be having more power in the NFL.
I don't know. That part is just crazy to me. And I think maybe this will be the tipping point with being able to review calls. Because if there is centralized replay, why isn't someone somewhere looking at every single one of these judgment calls? It makes perfect sense. Like a game pass interference as a penalty is way too impactful to be 100% a judgment call at this point. We have too much information, we have too much technology, and we should expect better out of the league and the officials.
I agree. And I think it's both the process and the people involved. You're 100% right in that there's no reason that there should be all-star crews in the playoffs. It just doesn't make sense. I mean, just the level of continuity you have from being a ref with the same crew during the season, the extent to which you're going to trust different people's opinions, their own vulnerability in admitting, oh, I didn't get a great view of this call. Maybe I don't have the best angle, weighing different viewpoints and what someone might be good at, what someone might not be good at. I think all of that it's going to be better with a crew you're familiar with than it is with a brand new crew. And I don't know that that changes the call necessarily, but I think you're more likely to get a better call with that kind of crew together. I guess I don't, I really think that there should be the option to review calls in terms of a challenge system. I think that makes a lot of sense to me. It won't be perfect, but it'll be better than the system we currently have. Besides that, I don't really know what else you can do. I mean, I don't want the NFL to be to some extent like the NBA, where plays are getting stopped every 30 seconds for review in some places. And that's an exaggeration with the NBA, but I feel like at its worst, that can be a real hindrance to game quality. And I don't think you're...
Especially in late game situations. I mean, that would just be untenable, but
right.
There has to be some middle ground.
Right, exactly. I don't think you review every pass interference penalty, but I think giving a coach an opportunity to challenge it, I think makes a lot of sense. And this kind of is a place where, whether it's just personal fouls, whether it's it's plays over 15 yards or 10 yards, the one thing I worry about with that is that, like, on every big touchdown pass late in a game, coaches are going to throw this magical challenge flag in an attempt to sort of like spot a hold on the offensive line or something. And I don't think that's going to necessarily
there's
work.
no way. No, that would be the biggest problem. We can't put it into place where you can challenge if there wasn't a penalty. If in this situation, if the flag is thrown and picked up, I feel like that should be involved.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm not saying that there wasn't holding, but in the sense that, like, just that there was a magical hold that nobody saw. I think you should probably have to, if there's going to be a challenge, you should have to challenge for something. You should have to challenge, either this was pass interference or that particular player held in that particular play. You can't just, have a general, review this entire play and see if anybody committed the penalty. I don't think that works.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. It's the actual, the logistics of it and the barriers of it we would have to negotiate, and that would have to be something that takes a while to figure out. But I do think it needs to happen. If it's not next year, if that's only when the conversation starts, that's fine. But at some point, we're definitely trending that way. And I mean, this is the biggest blunder I can remember in some time. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of actually impacting a team's playoff hopes, it has to be, obviously. And it wasn't like, I read about this today, it wasn't like this absolutely changed this game. I mean, realistically, even after this play, it was about a 10% win expectancy swing from where the pass interference penalty happened to where the Lions were after the flag was picked up. They still had 4th and 1 on the Cowboys side of the field. Of course, we didn't know that they would take a delay of game penalty and then punt 10 yards out of bounds. And from that point forward, the Cowboys... Sorry?
Who made the worst call? Pete Morelli on the non-flag or Jim Caldwell to punt it on that play?
I mean, it's a bad call. It's exacerbated by the fact that you got a 10-yard punt when you decided to play field position. In either case, it was not great. And it's not really a surprise to see Jim Caldwell be super conservative. He was a little more aggressive, I believe, last week. But this is kind of what he does. He's a super conservative coach. And this was a game where I felt like the Cowboys had been successful on 4th down. They picked up that 4th and 1 on the Murray touchdown earlier. You think they would have taken some inspiration from that and trusted they could get a yard on what is not a great run defense. And
that's my issue. I understand the argument that your defense got you here, lean on it, whatever. Mm-hmm. It's not like you're playing your defense. You're not running against this year's Lions. You're running against this year's Cowboys. Mm-hmm. You should be able to get a yard. And if you get that yard, you probably win the game.
You're in a lot better spot for sure. How can I put this? I guess I understand the idea that you're going to lean on your defense. Maybe you punt, but you're still leaning on your defense if you're giving them a short field. Like
sure.
It's not as if maybe you're relying more on your defense if you're giving them a short field than you are by punting and forcing them to go.
That's a great point.
70 yards or whatever. So I mean, I don't really understand that side of the argument. It's Jim Caldwell. He's going to be conservative, and I don't want to say that cost him the game either. But all these things came into play. All these things mattered. The Cowboys picking up 4th and 6 at midfield with that pass to Jason Witten also helped. The defensive holding penalties on the next series, 2 penalties, 1 on Carey, 1 on DeAndre Levy. The DeAndre Levy penalty actually, it wasn't legitimate holding, but it turned what would have been 4th and 9 into a 1st down. Those are true, plays that were probably just as big as the picked up pass interference flag. So, I mean, the Lions didn't blow it. They blew it, but they didn't it was a combination of things. It wasn't just that one pass interference call. It wasn't that one penalty. It wasn't that one fourth down decision. It was a combination of things that led them to lose this game.
Just in terms of the game flow and how it all went, was there anything that stood out to you as surprising?
I was surprised at how effective the Detroit pass rush was. I mean, they had just a otherworldly game. Zeke Ansah was just a monster in this game. He was just destroying worlds. He had 4 hits, 1 sack. They hit Romo 10 times, sacked him 6 times on not that many dropbacks, I believe, 37 dropbacks. I mean, a really dominant game from the Detroit pass rush. And they're good, but that Dallas offensive line is pretty good too, even without Doug Free. And so I was surprised to see them be that effective and have them impact the game that significantly, especially early on.
I wrote about this morning. I think that if there was any question that Terrell Austin should be a head coach next year, that puts it to rest. I don't.
Seems crazy, right?
That guy is. I'd hire him tomorrow. It's who knows how he's going to be in interviews and what his vision for running a team is, things like that. But just based on how he's run that defense this year, I mean, that game plan yesterday was amazing. I mean, they did such a good job of because we talked about this. If you line up and just run, if you rush 4 against Dallas, they have too much talent on that offensive line. They're going to be able to handle that. But where they struggle is they're not great against blitzes. And if you run a lot of games at them, you're at least giving yourself a better chance.
Right.
So when you have as much talent as Detroit does on their front 4 and you mix in the games, they did a great job. I was so impressed with how, especially early on, what their game plan looked like, how they executed it. And that's what we've seen all year from this team. Any other defense, I think, not any other, a lot of other defenses in the league. If you lose a guy like Nick Fairley, we'd have a conversation about it every week. Is he coming back? What does it mean? What is this? We haven't talked about it for half the season.
Absolutely. And I thought that really the game plan was solid enough that when they did break down, it was breaking down from individual players making mistakes. It was Mohamed Sise making a mistake. It was Cassius Vaughn stumbling on that Terrence Williams touchdown. It wasn't like it was a schematic issue where guys were getting, there were blown coverages and guys were getting wide open. It was just the weaker points of that defense weren't able to hold up against a tough situation. Rasheed Mathis had a quad injury that didn't help during the game, but Darius Slade did a great job during this contest. I thought that he wasn't on Dez Bryant the entire game by any means, but he did an excellent job when he was matched up against Dez, who only, I believe, had 3 catches in this game?
Yeah, I mean, and I think the 2 other ones went for 3 yards, I believe.
Yeah,
maybe 5 yards.
Dez had a 43-yard catch and run, and that wasn't even with Slay in coverage. That was on a crossing pattern where DeAndre Levy was picked up Dez coming across the formation when it was in not man coverage, but he was following Dez step for step until Dez kind of got that last little bit of acceleration and pushed him away. I mean, not many outside linebackers even have a prayer in that matchup, let alone, are competitive the way that DeAndre Levy was.
What I was impressed by, I mean, I think that coming into this game, you had to know that Dallas's running game, which has been the basis of their offense all year, wasn't going to be able to be as good. And they were going to need to win in some other way. And what was, I guess, kind of surprising to me is that they won with their background players making big plays. Like, Cole Beasley had a couple huge catches. Jason Witten led the team in receptions. Terrence Williams had that huge touchdown and another one. Romo wasn't as good as he's been all year. I mean, it was a rougher game for him for the most part until the end. And the guys that don't normally lean on came up very big for them.
Do you feel like Tony Romo's not going to get enough credit for this game and for when he did play well for that comeback because of the pass interference call?
Yes, I do think so. And I guess I didn't give him enough credit this morning because I've seen him play so well this year that this just isn't one of his better games. But again, in stretches, he's done everything he's needed to this year, and that was true again yesterday.
I mean, even if he didn't play great, I think he played better during the second half. That was
Definitely.
He was at the crux of that drive to win them the game. Made a couple very important throws. The touchdown pass, he extended the play. The pass to Witten was right on target. An option route where there could have been some miscommunication, just a perfect throw. The pass
that route by Witten, though, was disgusting.
He's so good.
Little fake. His old man game right now is so strong. That tiny little head fake to the outside, it was all over. I was like, oh man, Jason Witten, you are slower than not me, but a lot of people right now, and you could still get open. It's amazing.
Yeah, he sold James a head gabo. A dummy that he's not going to want to watch on tape. Fortunately, he doesn't have to, I guess.
Yeah, he'll probably never have to see it again if he doesn't want to.
Yeah, you're probably have to be pretty disappointed if you're a Lions fan or you're a member of the Lions organization, not just because you lost this game, but because you're gonna hit the offseason, and by the time these guys come back, it may be without Terrell Austin, like you said, who deserves a head coaching job. Also, probably going to be without Ndamukong Suh as well.
That's crazy that a player like Ndamukong Suh is going to hit free agency.
I don't really know what to say. I mean, he's going to get a bigger contract than the one he was on, and the one he was on was insane.
That guy, oh man, the play, the first sack, the second one was whatever. Those sort of sacks happen. The first one where he oh my god,
he ragdolled Zach Martin.
What? Zach Martin, who's a legitimate All-Pro guard, and just grabbed onto Tony Romo's jersey for dear life and was never letting go. He is just a guy who, because of the organization he plays for, because of several incidents throughout his career, the opinion of him is still not where it should be, even though I think most people consider him one of the best players in the league. But just how comfortably he is, I don't think we appreciate yet. I mean, the guy is incredible.
He's otherworldly good, and you can't replace him if you're the Lions. I mean, I don't know what you do. I don't think there's an obvious path for them. I mean, the way their cap is set up, it's going to be exceedingly difficult for them to match any offer Suh gets elsewhere, if they even have that option. It's just a bummer because, I mean, part of it's the old CBA. I think under the new CBA, they re-signed Suh 2 years ago and don't have this problem, or they re-signed Suh last year and don't have this problem. And he's going to get paid. Someone's going to give him $100 million. I really feel like that's a likely possibility given how he's played over the second half of the season.
I agree with that. And one thing I was thinking about yesterday, though, is that I think Nick Fairley is a dangerous prospect for anyone. Like, the idea of signing him to a long-term deal is frightening for several reasons. But there's a chance if you give him a third of what Suh gets, you end up with a pretty nice deal.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what they kind of are going to have to do. I think that's your next best choice, given if you assume you're not going to be able to sign Suh, maybe you do something else. I was talking yesterday, I was thinking, what if the Bills signed Suh and then traded Marcel Darius? I feel like that would be a brave move, but it's not going to happen. It'll be interesting.
This is all stuff for a later time, though. We should talk about what actually happened this weekend while we have the minutes.
Yeah, that's fine. We don't need to talk about that stuff. Okay, fine. So we'll get to it. What else should we talk about on Sunday?
Well, let's go backwards. Let's go to the game that I obviously didn't enjoy that much if I was half awake for half of it. The Bills-Colts game, I guess I'm just not, or Bills, excuse me, the Bengals-Colts game, I guess I'm not surprised by how this went. But there are some parts of it that are still just baffling to me.
You didn't want to see a playoff offense with Rex Burkhead at wide receiver and Ryan Hewitt as the primary target in most plays?
That was harsh. But at the same time, if you know going in, all right, AJ Green is not playing, Andy Dalton is our quarterback, why doesn't Jeremy Hill run the ball 40 times in this game? It's not like they were down for all of it.
It's true.
They were within 2 scores for almost the entire game.
They weren't especially effective running the football, though. I mean, Jeremy Hill and Gio Bernard.
Agreed, but they averaged almost as many yards per carry as they average yards per attempt. So it's not like there's a huge drop-off.
I agree. I mean, almost is the operative word there. They still average more yards per play passing. And I mean, I have to go back and look at the tape. I mean, I haven't watched the All-22, obviously. I would imagine the Colts were leaving them in situations where they were daring him to throw. I can't imagine anything else. I'm surprised I didn't run the ball more. I'm not, I don't know about 40 times necessarily, but I am surprised that they didn't at least try more read option stuff. I'm surprised they didn't try more trick plays. And they did run the end around with Burkhead to start the game. That went for 23 yards.
23,
ran a flea flicker later on, but I mean, this should have been like the smoke and mirrors show. And I'm surprised that they were not as aggressive about showing the Colts all these different sort of trick plays and different things as maybe they should have been.
It's stupid to even ask this question, but if AJ Green does play that game, it's something relative to full health. Do you think it matters?
No, I mean, it's hard to say. I think that they were always going to be behind in this scenario. I mean, I don't think AJ Green's worth 17 points. I don't think they win that game. Yeah, but it does fundamentally change how you approach the game if you're the Colts. I mean, this was a team where Vontae Davis and Greg Toller were never afraid about getting beat downfield because they thought, okay, not only do we have safety help because we're not worried about them necessarily being able to beat us downfield, but we're not sure Andy Dalton's going to be able to get the ball there. And he wasn't. There was not a play where it felt like he had a guy with 2 steps or even a step and he delivered a good throw and it just didn't work out. I mean, there's guys weren't even getting open, let alone in a place where they could make plays.
I mean, I guess you think if AJ Green plays, it helps a little bit. But at the same time, what the Colts do best on that defense is slow down number 1 receivers. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's literally their strong suit. So you'd assume that hopefully you could take advantage of some other places, and they couldn't do that either. No,
that's right. And I mean, I think there's some sort of a knock-on effect. I think if you have AJ Green occupying Vontae Davis,
of course,
you probably have safety help. That keeps the safety, it makes the safety less likely to be in the box. Gives you another hole in the running game to work with, gives you a little more space to operate with. And maybe that helps. But at the same time, I kind of agree. I feel like it wouldn't have made enough of a difference for this game to be dramatically different. And other guys have bad receiving cores, and they don't go 18 to 35 for 155. Andy Dalton made a few questionable decisions in this game. He made a few plays where, he didn't get the ball out quickly enough. He wasn't putting the ball in places where guys were getting open. He wasn't scrambling to the extent that you might hope for to try and create some improvisational opportunities. And he wasn't, it just wasn't ever threatening. It really never felt like they were going to be a meaningful competitive team in this football game from the very start.
Part of that was Andrew Luck being absurd.
He was great. Whatever, final 2-3 games Schneid he was on, however he was struggling over the second half, he was not that guy in this game. He was 31 of 44 for 376, and that is with a bunch of drops. T.Y. Hilton could have had one of the greatest postseason games ever. And not all of those were drops, but there was one really bad drop that could have been a touchdown, and 2 deep throws where it was either off his fingertips or a half step away. With a little better luck, maybe you get a 250-yard day. He could have had that sort of performance given how frequently he was getting open.
I'd like to look at this at some point, just the correlation between the amount of times Andrew Luck gets hit and how good of a game he has. It's one of those situations where when you play a team like Cincinnati, who is a pass rush that is less than non-existent, he's going to be good. And yesterday you saw exactly what they tried to do. This team wants to take shots. I think only the Bucs threw more passes 20 yards downfield than the Colts. That's what they want to do. What?
You can't mess with the Bucs and their downfield passing.
Oh, no, of course not. Yeah, their deep passing game is incredible, obviously. But that's what they wanted to do, and he had time to look at those throws and then just say, it's okay. I'll just throw it to Boom Aaron for 8 yards again.
Yeah.
That's what happened. He had, 10 catches?
He was 10 of 11 for, I believe, 86 yards? 10 of 11 for 85 yards, and it wasn't like those were contested catches either.
The amount of time he had to throw yesterday was just insane, and you just can't give him that. If you allow him to look at every single option he has and to pick the best one based on how you're playing defense, you're probably going to lose to them.
Do you know what Andrew Luck's QBR out of the pocket was in this game?
No idea.
99.9.
Well, he could go outside of it whenever he wanted. No one was really stopping him.
Yeah, it was a Falcons-esque performance from this Bengals pass rush. And they had one.
I don't know, man. Based on the last few games of the year, I would put these Bengals right up there with that team.
Yeah, it's not great. And it was a roster construction thing. They let Michael Johnson go, didn't really replace him, and they said, we're going to have Wallace Gilberry and Marcus Hunt and those guys pick up the slack, and they didn't. Gilberry, again, I thought a great situational pass rusher, someone who maybe he makes that sort of Junior Gillette leap where he gets a bigger role and he's a quality pass rusher on an every down basis. Just wasn't that guy this year. Had 1.5 sacks. Carlos Dunlap, underrated player, but not a 15 sack a year guy, and they needed him to be that guy this year. It's the one thing they need to work on before anything else this offseason. They've invested heavily in their secondary. There's a good defense there, but that is the thing they have to fix is they have to find an every down pass rusher.
100%.
And
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, just transitioning, I think that, that's the thing they do the worst and it allowed the Colts to take advantage. Mm-hmm. That's not going to be the case next week.
Is that so?
When you go against that Denver team, it's not quite how it's not quite the same situation. I think that's the problem with the Colts right now is that
They need Andrew Luck to be the guy he was yesterday. And in order for him to be, he needs a ton of time to do it. And this is the team he's going to get that against. The rest of the teams he's going to play for the rest of the season, probably not the case.
That's an interesting idea. I mean, I can still see Andrew Luck getting out of the pocket against those guys, even if the window's a little smaller. I think when he's in Andrew Luck mode, he's just a monster, and there's not much anyone can do. I wouldn't be surprised to see them try and run the ball a little more frequently next week. They were pretty effective running the ball in this game, and obviously the Denver run defense is much better than Cincinnati's run defense, but I think that might be their way of trying to slow down the pass rush. It's not just getting Luck scrambling on the boundaries, but then also given that they actually might have a competent running back right now in Dan Herron, giving him a shot to sort of slow down the pass rush and keeping those ends honest.
Man, I'm thinking that the competence in their running back has more to do with Cincinnati's run defense than it does to do with
This was in a game where Dan Herron fumbled twice, by the way. Fumbled twice, and it's
true.
100% clear. It's like, oh, massive upgrade.
I just don't think that's going to work too well against Denver. Especially this offensive line just isn't very good. I mean, we're in a situation now that we've been in the last couple of years where injuries and various other things have really made them a lot worse. I mean, you like Jackie Mewhort at guard much better than you like him at right tackle. You know, things like that, and them having to get to backup guards and they're just in a place where that offensive line is again a problem, and it's a problem at the worst time of the year.
Yeah. So I mean, what do you do now if you're the Bengals? You stay in the course. Andy Dalton is now the first quarterback in NFL history since the merger to lose his first 4 playoff games. What do you do?
Do you have a choice?
I don't know. I mean, you could cut him. You could cut him or trade him, and his cap hit would be exactly the same next year, $9.6 million. You could try and take a flyer on somebody in the draft. You can try and bring in more competition for him, even if it's not necessarily someone who's going to be a guaranteed person to take his job. Do you want to go on this ride again? This we're going to lose in the first round ride again next year?
I'm willing to go on it one more time.
Oh boy, said like a Bears fan.
I want one more time. I think that some health offensively. You get Tyler Eifert missed the entire season. AJ Green didn't play yesterday. You hope that maybe your health luck is better on that side of the ball come next playoffs, and hopefully your defense gets a little bit better if you can add some pieces there. I mean, you get a pass rusher, and maybe that side of the ball is better. It helps your offense. I think that they made the playoffs again. They just committed something to him long-term money-wise. It would be hard for me to walk away from him this offseason.
Fair enough. One team that does not need a pair of pass rushers, the Baltimore Ravens.
Good Lord.
Who Terrell Suggs and Elvis Dumervil got very
familiar with. Haloti Ngata didn't play too bad either. No,
Haloti Ngata was also great. It was a team effort, but man, what a game Terrell Suggs and Elvis Dumervil had just in terms of just beating the Pittsburgh tackles over and over and over again. Just a really fun thing to watch in their 30-17 victory on the road to Pittsburgh.
I think this was our question about the Ravens for the last month and a half was, is the rest of the team going to be good enough to bolster that secondary? Is if a quarterback has enough time, he's going to take advantage of those guys. He's probably going to pick on them. And we got our answer on Saturday. He didn't have enough time, so it didn't matter.
It didn't matter. And I'll tell you what, I don't think the secondary played all that bad in this game, especially given comparisons to the other secondary in this game. I thought Baltimore secondary, given the weaknesses, given the lack of names, outplayed the Pittsburgh secondary.
I mean, Will Hill can put together a heck of a game every once in a while. He's not a bad player.
Will Hill on the field, Will Hill's great. Off the field, not so much. But I mean, this is a conscious choice by the Ravens. Some of this is injuries, but I mean, they're playing Darian Stewart and Will Hill ahead of Matt Elam for a reason. They have Antoine Cason on the roster because they're shopping at the bottom of the bargain bin. Steelers, on the other hand, I mean, Ike Taylor was possibly a healthy scratch. It hasn't really come out. He practiced all week and then was a scratch and gave the death stare to the camera before the game when they showed him. But I mean, Mike Mitchell and Troy Polamalu, those are two pretty high-priced safeties, and they were not good in this game. Polamalu was just more anonymous than anything else, but Mike Mitchell had a few really ugly plays, just was not remotely competent in coverage. And that's not unexpected for a guy who was a street free agent as recently as a season ago. I just thought that even given the pass rush difference, I thought Baltimore they were making plays in a way that Pittsburgh secondary just wasn't.
I agree. But it's also just, to me, I mean,
when it's clicking for them, and when they have a lot of talent.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a team that can be really good when it's going right. When Flacco plays decently well, and when their front seven makes up for what's happening on the back end, they're really scary. And we saw that. I wrote this morning, I said, it looked like 2012 on that Pittsburgh offensive line. I mean, they sent them back in time. Pittsburgh's offensive line has been good this year. I mean, not good, but very competent. And that was not the case. And that's what this front seven can do to you, is that they can completely collapse anything you try to do offensively. And they did it. This is a team that it can be scary when things are clicking. And we saw that all year. When they were really good, they were really good. And then they were really bad. Damn, they were really bad.
It's true. And I thought Joe Flacco played very well in this game.
Me too.
I really can't think of a lot he did wrong. And for a guy who was, 4 of 22 against the Texans 2 weeks ago, I thought he was very efficient. I thought he was making plays. I thought he was, extending plays. He really overall just did a very solid job. And the only thing I can think of is that play where he scrambled against his body. No, the play he scrambled against his body around the end zone and then couldn't get enough on a pass to an open receiver, and William Gay knocked it out. That was the one play I could think of. Otherwise, he did throw a really ugly duck on what was a bomb, and Torrey Smith played great defense to knock it out of Bryce McCain's hands. That was good. But overall, I just thought a very solid performance. And I don't think there's something about Joe Flacco in the playoffs. I don't think there's anything to that. But I mean, the guy elevated his game when he needed to. I mean, this was a game where I don't think they needed Flacco to play great for them to win. But given that they weren't running the ball very well, and given that they, really came down to turnovers, I thought he was probably the difference in this game.
I don't think there's a whole lot to this Baltimore going into New England, whatever, but it doesn't matter where they're going next week when that front seven plays like that. They're frightening.
Right.
It doesn't matter what the history between the two teams is. I mean, that has nothing to do with it. It has to do with the fact that Elvis Steubenville's playing like a madman, and the rest of those guys are pretty good too. Yeah,
I mean, you saw the Patriots-Chiefs game. The way you beat the Patriots, the best thing you can do against them is just beat their tackles and run stunts in front and dominate that offensive line. And if the Ravens get the same pass rush and the same performance from their front seven next week, if they get Timmy Jernigan back, that wouldn't hurt either. This could be, I'm not saying it's going to be another Chiefs game because it's impossible to say that, but I mean, it has the potential to live up to that in terms of what the Ravens could do. They could play as well as that Chiefs front seven did in that game. That's the best way to attack anybody, really, let alone the Patriots.
Is there anything else you want to say about the Steelers, just to kind of put a bow on it?
Should we talk about the Ben Roethlisberger not concussion?
Sure.
Concussion testing is important. Concussion testing is important. And
I agree.
I don't think Ben Roethlisberger had a neck injury that required some simple massaging from a trainer to have him go back out in that game. I don't think that the fact that he threw an interception is proof that he had a concussion, because I wrote in my column today, I think Eli Manning would have 15 concussions a year if every bad interception was proof of a concussion. But I just felt like this was a situation where it was really clear. It was almost like it's too simple of an argument to make, I guess, but the fact that you clearly have a player who's very important to his team's playoff chances. This is a very big moment in a playoff game, and it seems so flippant and so hypocritical to be like, oh, we care about player safety, and then just rush Ben Roethlisberger back onto the field. And I'm sure some of that is Roethlisberger. I'm sure he wasn't sitting there saying, hey, I want to get tested for a concussion, but at some point the league has to stand in the way of stuff like that. They have to protect the players from themselves. And this was a case where I felt like they did not.
I agree. One more thing, Steeler related. How much do you think not having Le'Veon Bell affected this game?
Oh, it's enormous. I mean, the fact that they came out with Ben Tate on the first 3 plays and basically built their offense around him should tell you something. I mean, the first interception, the play where Roethlisberger was in pass protection and checked down and had the ball bounce off Ben Tate's hands into Terrell Suggs' thighs for an interception. I don't think that happens with Le'Veon Bell. He's going to get more out of the running game. He's going to be a better target in the passing game, and he's going to be much better in pass protection. And the Steelers really didn't have, I mean, the combination they had of Drew Archer, Josh Harris, and Ben Tate, it just wasn't the same. And there was no way it was ever going to be the same. I'm the first guy to argue for running backs being overrated and fungible, but this is a franchise caliber running back versus a bunch of street free agents and rookies. And that's just not going to be able to You're not going to be able to compare that. The Steelers didn't run the ball very well in this game. They mostly abandoned it. And pass protection was a huge problem. I don't know if they win the game if they have Le'Veon Bell back there versus Ben Tate or Josh Harris, but I can't imagine it doesn't help them pretty significantly.
No, I totally agree. And I think that's the issue that really kind of, creeps up, is that it's not just that Le'Veon Bell's a good running back. It's that when you're used to playing with an offensive line all season, when you understand the protections, when the offensive line relies on the running back in that way, everything starts to get a little bit worse. And I think that's what you saw. And when everything gets a little bit worse against this front seven, things are gonna go really poorly.
Yeah. I'm gonna miss Antonio Brown. That's all.
Just in general, just like not watching him. I don't disagree with that.
Yeah, I kind of just feel like it's more fun watching Antonio Brown than not watching Antonio Brown. I'm gonna miss that, but otherwise, I thought the better team won.
Yeah, I agree. All right. Speaking of the better team winning, I'm not sure if the better team won in that other game on Saturday, but they managed to win.
Better team is an interesting question, I guess. If you're talking about the Panthers-Cardinals game.
I think the Cardinals are the better team, but it doesn't really matter when Ryan Lindley's playing quarterback.
How bad? I wrote about this in my column today. How bad do you think Logan Thomas was in that one practice where Bruce Arians was like, okay, Ryan Lindley is terrible, we're going to put Logan Thomas in there. And then a day later was like, holy crap, no, we can't do that. We have to get Ryan Lindley back in there. How bad could he really have been? But I mean, that's the biggest question, right?
That's exactly what I was thinking during the second half. Like, just there's no way he could be worse. Like, it would be impossible to be worse. I think Chase Stewart is the one who said Lindley's performance was like the 8th worst in playoff history or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's hard to believe.
There are 7 worse quarterbacks.
There are 7 worse performances than that one.
Oh man, I remember Kerry Collins in the Super Bowl against that Ravens defense. That was probably worse.
It's hard for me to imagine a quarterback playing a worse game than Ryan Lindley did on Saturday.
It is, and I mean, this is the same league that knocked Teddy Bridgewater down several draft grades because he was bad against air on a pro day. Ryan Lindley started the playoff game, played the entire playoff game, was not benched. 16 of 28 for 82 yards, 4 sacks, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, left a bunch of plays on the field. This wasn't like it was a dominant performance from the Panthers defense. It was good. And the game plan was really smart from Ron Rivera, and Sean McDermott, I should say as well. But it was not the sort of game where the Cardinals were not getting guys open. Larry Fitzgerald was open at least once in the end zone for a touchdown, and Lindley just badly missed him. No running game, no hope. It never felt like the Cardinals were going to have any chance of moving the ball in offense in this game. And Logan Thomas is not good. He's the most raw quarterback coming out of college football this offseason. He was not good in college. I can't imagine that Ryan Lindley was better than Logan Thomas. At least gave them less of a chance of at least running the Jane Coaston all defensive pass interference playbook, of running the read option and just trying to trick them into something they hadn't seen on tape before. Just giving them options in a way that Ryan Lindley just did not.
When I'm considering like the Bears moving on from Jay Cutler and whether or not they should, that game on Saturday is my nightmare.
How many? I can imagine that being a big problem. Replacement level quarterback play is something that it's easy to be like, just try something new at quarterback. It's the same thing with Andy Dalton. Yeah, Andy Dalton's not that great. We should try something new. And then this is something new sometimes. You end up with Ryan Lindley as your starting quarterback. If I set a bet for you, Maze, Ryan Lindley pass attempts in the NFL from this point forward, and the line is 1/2. Are you taking the over or under?
Under, 100%.
Do you feel like he's
not even a hesitation, under?
You don't think he's going to get like that Matt Castle thing where it's like, oh, well, we've seen him play before, so he must be a competent backup quarterback. I mean, Charlie Whitehurst got guaranteed money the past 2 years.
I'm sure Ryan Lindley's a nice guy. I'm sure he's great at other things. I think we're all set with him being a starting quarterback in the NFL.
I mean, I am too. I feel bad in a way for Lindley, first off, because, this is his dream. And I do feel bad that it's like he's going to get blamed over the next few weeks for destroying the season single-handedly. And he did. I can't say that it'd be any different if they had even a marginal quarterback. That's just reality. And it's a tough thing to say, but that's football. I can't really fault the Cardinals though, because how often do you end up in a situation where you're a playoff team, you're a competitive team, and you need your third string quarterback to be good? Like if you usually go to your third string quarterback, either your season is done because you're terrible, or you've had so many injuries that you're not competitive. I mean, it really just does not happen very frequently. And so
that's a great point.
You can't have three good quarterbacks in the roster. It just doesn't work. You'd be cap strung elsewhere. You wouldn't have the option to use that guy very frequently. It just doesn't happen. And so I'm not. It's obviously upsetting that you had to get stuck with Lindley, and it was a problem for you. But there's not much they could have done really.
That 2-play sequence where Rashad Johnson returned the fumble inside the 10, and then Lindley threw the interception to Luke Kuechly on the next play.
Yeah,
it might be the most depressing 2-play sequence I can imagine, or like that I've ever seen. Like the shots of the Cardinals defensive players on the sideline after that play, it's like, oh man, really? Yeah. This is it. This is how we go.
They knew. I mean, they're not naive. They knew what was happening. Every time the Cardinals had a return, it was like, oh no, you have to get in the end zone if you want to score points. Like
that was the feeling. It was like watching the 2004 Bears. it's like, oh no, they only returned it to the 3. There go the points.
To be fair, they did score 2 touchdowns in short fields after the Cromartie interception and the Brendan Burson.
But they almost didn't. The Marion Grice almost fumbled.
He did. It's true. He came very close to fumbling. They were going to need short fields to win this game. They were going to need mistakes. And I think the other thing that came into play, maybe they win this game if they get lucky, if they have that, if they have those mistakes pop up, they get 2 turnovers, 3 turnovers, excuse me. Even if Lindley plays poorly, if he just doesn't throw interceptions, if he just doesn't turn the ball over, they just run a super conservative game plan, maybe they win this game. But the reality is they didn't play mistake-free football elsewhere. It wasn't just Ryan Lindley. It was, who was their punter?
Drew Butler. Drew had a rough day.
Drew Butler. I think I called him the Ryan Lindley of punters in my column. He not the best performance in this game. 34.8. Go ahead.
I tweeted it during the game when they muffed that punt and they recovered. He was just playing the long game. He was like really lulling them into a false sense of security. He was going to try to get a muffed punt every time. That was their best offense.
Well, he was punting to Kid Rock, so that did help. 34.8 yards per punt, 5 punts that traveled 33 yards or less, and a 20-yard punt to start the game. I mean, that's just... I can't even comprehend it. Like that is one of the worst punting performances you will ever see. And there was no reason. Just because Ryan Lindley sucks doesn't mean you have to punt terribly. It doesn't mean that Ted Ginn has to fumble a kickoff return inside his own 15-yard line after returning it from 8 yards deep. Antonio Cromartie dropped a pick 6 on the opening drive. Pretty similar to the pick he ended up having later in the game. And to be fair,
it was almost the same play.
I mean, to be fair, the referees had 3 really ugly missed calls in this game. They had the not ugly missed calls, but debatable calls. The missed PI against Michael Floyd early in the game, or late in the game on the fade pattern that would have been their biggest play on offense. The PI in the end zone on Tony Jefferson, and what was the other one? The Cam Newton would be fumble that they didn't call a fumble or intentional grounding, even though there was no receiver within 15 yards of the play. All those plays went against Arizona. So if those things happen differently, if they're very lucky as opposed to just marginally lucky, they might have been able to win this game. But the margin for error was virtually nil, and they were not error free in this game at all.
In the replacements, how that English kicker smoked cigarettes on the field?
I do.
That's what I would expect from Brenton Burson. Just like he's sitting back there ready to return a punt. You just see him like flick a cigarette out of his helmet. I assume we're going to see that in Seattle.
I've never seen a dude field punts like he's a 8-year-old playing Little League. Like he's like, I'm going to get on my knees to block this punt. Like I'm trying to stop a ground ball from going through my legs. And that's not the best way to field punts, it turns out.
You're totally right about all that stuff, though. If you have a terrible quarterback, you need to be good everywhere else. Mm-hmm. And it's not even that they had a terrible quarterback and the Ryan Lindley of punters.
is that they have nothing else offensively. Their running game is non-existent. And there's just nothing to protect them. And at a certain, the Arizona defense didn't play nearly as well as it had all season in this game. Their run defense has kind of fallen apart recently.
It has,
And I think part of that is that at a certain point, you can only do so much. And the guys know that, and it becomes disheartening. And it was only going to go so well for so long with this team, with the way their offense is playing.
Of course.
And they were playing on borrowed time, and it sucks because the way they played for most of the season and the job that coaching staff and that defense did, it's very impressive.
It's fair to say, given that, this was an old team, especially once they had the injuries, once they were getting guys like Tommy Kelly into more meaningful roles. They've had to do a lot over the past few weeks. Their offense has not exactly stayed on the field a ton. It's not surprising to see them kind of get tired out as the season's gone on. I don't want to take too much away from the Carolina team. I don't think they played great, but I thought Cam Newton was pretty great in terms of his ability to elude the blitzes and make plays. I thought Luke Kuechly and Thomas Davis were incredible in this game, especially Thomas Davis was just like, it looked like he had cheat codes in this game. Every time Ryan Lindley threw a pass, Thomas Davis was there. They only averaged, I think, 2.3 yards after the catch as far as Arizona receivers went, which was the lowest in the playoff round. And it felt like Davis made 100 tackles in this game.
That's one of the problems, is that if you're going to do a little dink and dunk passing game, you're not going to do it against this team.
No.
Because those two dudes are going to swallow every single play in front of them.
Yeah. And when you're also feeding them information on where to go, it helps too. And Ryan Lindley did that very frequently.
One other thing I wanted to say, this is vindication for all Jonathan Stewart lovers.
Yeah.
I've always thought he was a good player. I think that his main issue always and will forever be health. And the fact that he's gotten to play over these last 4 or 5 games and looked pretty damn good for big stretches of them, he's a good running back. And he's a nice player to have. And the fact that they've given him all the carries, I think, has helped them. And I think it's been nice to see. Even if it is a 5 or 6 game run and it never happens again, he deserved a moment like he had on Saturday.
Sure, and he was great. It's the injuries and it's the contract. The contract's not his fault. He got a big contract and accepted it. But he's always been a good player, and he's showing it this run. We should get out of here. I think we've covered all 4 of these games pretty well, and we have more to talk about as the week goes on.
We'll be back on Wednesday again, right?
I will be.
Back at it.
That's news to me. Sure, why not? What do you want to talk about on Wednesday?
I don't know. Do you want to do like half mailbag and then kick around some other stuff?
All right. We can talk about some news. Maybe there's Chip Kelly thing to talk about. All kinds of stuff.
Yeah, there's coaching stuff. We'll have a little bit more of a relaxed, casual catch up session. Then we'll look forward to the games on Friday.
That sounds like a Bill and Bob show to me.
I love it. I'm in.
All right. Until then, thanks for listening. In this new year, we'll be back on Wednesday with another Grantland NFL podcast. But until then, enjoy football.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for listening to Grantland. To hear more Grantland shows in your earballs, subscribe to Grantland Sports and Grantland Pop Culture on iTunes. Or go to grantland.com and click on podcasts.